Over the years, there have been more than a few controversial moments involving the MMA in general and the Ultimate Fighting Championship, or UFC in particular.
We know for sure, we all know, absolutely 100%, that people have cheated and taken steroids and got away with it.
I'm on national television getting jumped.
It's great to have a big sponsor like Reebok involved, but not if the fighters have to suffer.
Like any other billion-dollar sports company, things are never going to be easy. But when you're dealing with something as extreme and brutal as mixed martial arts, there can be few issues that you won't get quite as often in other sports.
Anybody who is involved in jiu-jitsu knows that that's the nastiest submission you can put somebody in.
There's no shame in it for people like Dana White, because certain problems will be thrown to the side as being just a part of the business.
We run a business. We've been very good at it. Not only do we run the business, we continue to grow the sport and take everybody along.
Unfortunately, there are some things that you just can't ignore.
When this thing went down, we've been here.
And while some may not find these entries that extreme, they've certainly affected the business, and not for the better, over the years. At the end of the day, the UFC is indeed a phenomenal form of entertainment. But at what point do we stop phasing out all the noise being created around us?
You let go. And if you don't, I will cut you.
Unlike WWE, the UFC tends to face these situations head-on on most occasions, which can certainly make for some interesting viewing in the media.
It wasn't a question, I was just kind of making a
Oh,
point.
no, I want you again. Welcome to the fight business, my friend.
After all, these fighters are larger-than-life personalities.
And more importantly, the only thing that matters to me is that the athletes love it, and they do. And she did. Didn't she not?
With that being said, let's look at some of the darkest secrets and controversies in MMA history. Welcome to the age of MMA. Enjoy this video. Testosterone replacement therapy, TRT. Testosterone replacement therapy, TRT, is exactly what it sounds like. It is a medical treatment program through which athletes and non-athletes can control and maintain a certain level of the hormone testosterone. Testosterone contributes to sexual function, bone and muscle health, and mental well-being. Some athletes have abused this system, and as such, it was deemed to be a performance-enhancing treatment and subsequently banned by the Nevada State Athletic Commission.
There was talk of certain camps that would hire guys who knew testing, and these guys would orchestrate a program for these fighters to make sure that they didn't get caught. And that they would figure out ways to, to taper off, but still keep your gains and make sure that you didn't test positive at all. And this was done under the assumption that everyone else was cheating as well.
The controversy arose when fighters such as Dan Henderson, Chael Sonnen, Vitor Belfort, and Frank Mir argued that while some bad apples may abuse TRT, they use it to maintain mental stability and happiness in their everyday life. Belfort, for instance, enlisted the help of testosterone replacement therapy to try and enhance his performances. It was a controversial method, and many people believe that UFC not only knew about Vitor's involvement, but actively embraced it.
For Vitor, like, something happens with him, like when they allowed him to take it, like during the Rockhold fight and the Bisping fight, dude, his body ate it up. But it's a kind of a different thing.
The promotion denied all wrongdoing, but in this day, many feel that they were involved in a cover-up.
Nobody deserves anything. You got to earn it. You got Rockhold right now screaming, I deserve this. You just got knocked out in the first round. You don't deserve anything.
Drugs. Brock Lesnar was one of the most intimidating figures in MMA, which led him towards the UFC Heavyweight Championship. The Beast's unbelievable strength and speed made many think that he was a mutant of some kind.
I'm a white boy, and I'm jacked. Deal with it.
And upon his return to the octagon for UFC 200, he looked as good as ever with a decisive decision victory over veteran Mark Hunt.
For the winner, by unanimous decision, Brock Lesnar.
Unfortunately, Lesnar tested positive for clomiphene, and the win was overturned, with many fans believing that the UFC was aware of the situation before the actual fight. The card had already taken several hits courtesy of Jon Jones and Conor McGregor, so it would make sense that Dana would do anything in order to preserve his biggest attraction by any means necessary.
he's going to get suspended. But how long? For how long?
I thought they gave him a year and $225,000 fine.
Is that what it is?
Pretty sure.
Okay.
Plenty of mixed martial artists have been suspended from the UFC due to testing positive for substances. Plenty of these punishments are legitimate, but there are tons of backlash regarding pot being on the banned substances list. Former Strikeforce and WEC champ Nick Diaz is one of the biggest names to have been suspended for testing positive for the drug.
When this thing went down, we've been here. And many people who know me and know the sport, I've been a very reactionary person in the past. I'm a little older and a little wiser now. I don't just react, I have to know all the facts. I don't know all the facts, you know? When you hear this, because it's so jarring when you hear this, it's like, wait a minute, this guy was suspended for 5 years and got a $150,000 fine for marijuana? So you can completely take that out of context too, but that's his third offense. It's his third offense, and you know, let's all be honest here, Nick Diaz doesn't exactly play by the rules.
Even though he passed 2 legitimate and more significant tests before, he was handed a 5-year ban. People often call out UFC for its double standards.
Those people weren't even willing to take into consideration the fact that he passed 2 tests. He passed 2 tests, 2 WADA tests, World Anti-Doping Association tests, and failed one from some fucking local lab. And the local lab's numbers were off the chart. So 2 out of 3 tests he passed. They weren't even willing to take into consideration those other tests because they didn't perform them. Not only that, they're performing urine tests, which are significantly less accurate than blood tests. So they f***ed him. They f***ed him raw, and they f***ed him out of $165,000 in 5 years of his career.
Ridiculous decisions. The biggest of which is the evergreen Jon Jones vs. Gustafsson controversy. Jon Jones vs. Alexander Gustafsson was one of the greatest fights in the history of the UFC. The 2 men battled it out for the right to be called the world champion, going toe-to-toe for 5 rounds in what remains one of the greatest examples of 2 warriors battling it out for glory.
The winner by unanimous decision, and still the undisputed UFC light heavyweight champion of the world, Jon Jones.
He sets the record here tonight in his toughest challenge yet.
It was a fantastic effort from both men, but things started to go a little sour in the hours and days following the fight. After Jones was given the decision victory, Fight Metric stats suggested that Gustafsson was leading 191 to 120 when it came to significant strikes landed in the fight.
But Alexander Gustafsson was outstanding. Wow, and landed nearly 200 significant strikes.
However, once the final count was read out, the score in that department read 137 to 114 in Jones's favor.
The judges score the contest 48-47, 48-47, and 49-46.
Which led many to believe that the UFC purposefully kept the belt on their poster boy. The promotion obviously denied this, but it remains a sore spot for the Swedes' supporters to this day.
When you get out of a fight like that where you almost won the title against the greatest of all time, where do you go from there?
You know, it was tough. It was really tough because, you know, everybody was saying like, "You're winning this fight. You're winning this fight. You had 3 rounds against him. Like, you're winning this fight." Like it felt like you said, it was just right there at the goal line. I didn't really past that goal line at all. I just felt like that. It was tough. It was tough.
Hamill vs. Bisping decision. There have been several very controversial decisions, but this one takes the cake for several reasons. Matt Hamill was claimed by many as the man who would have won the Ultimate Fighter 3 under proper circumstances, not Michael Bisping.
Winning the Ultimate Fighter would not have counted. Do you feel like it counted now?
I always thought that might win counted. This counts even more. You've been calling me out. Who's the real winner of the Ultimate Fighter? The same one it always has been.
The fight was held in Bisping's home country of England with apparently home-fielded judges. Even the pro-Bisping crowd booed the awful decision in Bisping's favor. Poor unassuming Matt Hamill went into the hostile territory and beat up Michael Bisping only to leave with a loss.
Matt, it seemed like you had some very improved striking
Mike did a good job in fighting. He been Federer's corner, and I give him a lot of credit. But I don't want the fight. But he got to the show.
One such occasion is when Georges St-Pierre got his face ripped apart by Johnny Hendricks in November 2013, but still won the fight. GSP looked like he got mauled by a bear with a sledgehammer, while Hendricks looked like he had been lightly hit by a preteen with a wiffle bat. With that scrap in mind, there is an unwritten rule in MMA that in a title fight, the reigning champ needs to be knocked out, submitted, or beaten so badly that he or she cannot stand, for the belt to change hands. This is a source of controversy in many title fights, including Alexander Gustafsson against John Jones a couple of years ago. The list of questionable decisions goes on and can be compiled for any MMA promotion, but it is a reality in any competition that involves judges.
Yeah, I'm blown away that Georges St-Pierre won that fight. And listen, I'm a promoter. He's the biggest pay-per-view star on the planet for me, and I still don't think he won that fight. I want what's fair, and that wasn't fair. I think the Nevada State Athletic Commission is atrocious. I think the governor needs to step in immediately before these guys destroy this sport like they did boxing.
There is a necessary level of human error for combat sports, however, some of them are just too ridiculous and controversial to put aside. Fighter pay.
6 figures for every fight, and then now he's making 10 grand. And that's a big hit.
Yeah, it's huge.
You've probably heard this being recycled time and time again, but on average, the UFC fighters don't earn nearly enough when it comes to maintaining a stable living. In addition to the fight bonuses, they can expect anywhere between 4 and 5 figures, and whilst that seems like a suitable amount of money, some of them are only fighting for the promotion once or twice a year.
Make everyone come back for more. They have to take the paycheck they have to take. This is the game.
When you compare these figures to the likes of Conor McGregor and Ronda Rousey, who are regularly getting 7-figure fees, the practice becomes even shadier. A number of fighters have spoken out about this, in addition to the fact that the Reebok deal has further cut their ability to earn a proper living.
He doesn't care about belts or anything, he just wants to take the fight. You know what the holdup is?
What?
Reebok.
That's awful.
Oh. Well, you're Georges St-Pierre, sponsored by Under Armour, and then how many fights do you have? And Reebok's and like, yeah, here's whatever, 50 grand worth of these Reebok pumps. He's like, what the No, man, I'm Georges St-Pierre. So he's saying either the UFC has to make up for it in his purse or Reebok has to make up for it. So I think it's a money thing.
Really? That's what you hear? Is this inside scoop?
Earlier in 2015, the UFC signed a new sponsorship with sports apparel company Reebok. Calling this deal poorly received would be like calling World War II a little skirmish.
You say that all the money, all the revenue is going to the fighters. Now, what does that mean? I mean, I'm assuming UFC will make money off of it as well. So how do you divvy that up?
UFC won't make a dime off this.
A dime?
Not one penny.
What's in it for you?
This is, we're looking at this thing long term.
Plenty of fighters have spoken out against it as they receive significantly less under the new sponsorship protocols. Joe Rogan has indicated that it isn't good for the fighters or Reebok, as the company has received negative press as a result, and one of the best cutmen in the business, Jacob Stitch Duran, was fired from the UFC for speaking out against the deal. Since the ink has dried, there has been more talk of fighters unionizing, spearheaded by GSP, and many consider it to be clear now that the promotion treats its fighters poorly.
You don't like the way we pay our fighters? Too bad. Go start another MMA organization and you go figure out how to do it. And you can pay them $10 million a fight, $30 million a fight, whatever you want to do.
Bad sportsmanship. From not releasing submission holds to post-fight brawls and much more, the list here is endless. One of the most basic rules of sportsmanship is that while you can let emotions run high during competition, bring it down when it's over and be gentlemanly. It's a simple rule but not always followed in practicality. 2010's brawl that followed the main event between Jake Shields and Dan Henderson ranks among the least sportsmanlike events in the history of MMA. Jake Shields had just defeated Dan Henderson at Strikeforce Nashville when Jason Miller entered the ring to offer up an unofficial challenge. Shields' teammates did not take too kindly to the impromptu challenge and threw down the middleweight right there on the spot on national television. It was a true black eye for the sport.
What happened tonight, man?
That little boy came in and tried to push my boy right after he's done fighting.
You want a shot at mayhem?
No.
All right, Jason. Crazy night tonight, brother. What happened?
Man, I just wanted to ask for my rematch. You know, I feel really bad that whole thing went down like that, but I just wanted to ask for a rematch. I wasn't trying to get in a big brawl.
GSP and the Vaseline allegations. During the Georges St. Pierre's title fight against BJ Penn in 2009 at UFC 94, while in the corners between rounds, Phil Nurse applied petroleum jelly to GSP's shoulders as well as his face. While it's fine for cuts and on the face, it is illegal on other parts of the body. Grappling is easier when an opponent cannot grip you. An investigation took place, and while the NSAC did not indicate that St. Pierre and his camp were completely innocent, no serious disciplinary actions were ever taken. All parties involved stated that they had done nothing wrong, and while many fans still cite this as a reason for disliking the now semi-retired welterweight king, he and his camp have said the entire issue is a misunderstanding. Not releasing submission holds. Even in the most extreme sports, there are some rules of etiquette and manners that are pretty easy to follow. Stop wrenching the limb when your opponent taps is one of them. Rousimar Palhares is one of the most significant offenders in the group of grapplers who crank holds too long. He's skilled, and it's damn impressive that he can lock in these submissions. But there are too many examples of refs having to crowbar him off an opponent who have already tapped.
Justifiably so. Big mistake. Huge mistake. And look out for the legs. He's got it. Tap, 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 tap. He didn't let go.
Tomas Draval was the first significant instance, and in 2013 it was his heel hook against Mike Pierce, who tapped 7 or 8 times. They got him banned from the UFC.
Anybody who is involved in jiu-jitsu knows that that's the nastiest submission you can put somebody in. It's the dirtiest, nastiest submission in jiu-jitsu or in the sport of mixed martial arts. And when you get it and you know you got it and the guy taps, you let go. And if you don't, I will cut you.
Renato Sobral notoriously held a chokehold at UFC 74 that put David Heath to sleep. He then admitted to that being his intention and was fined $25,000 and lost his contract with the UFC. Frank Mir wanted to kill Brock Lesnar. MMA has some prolific trash talkers. Conor McGregor is probably the best right now. In the past, Michael Bisping, Josh Koscheck, and Chael Sonnen have also reputations for being quick-witted fighters who can back it up in the octagon. Frank Mir took it to another level, and a very unsportsmanlike one, when he said, "I want to fight Lesnar. I hate who he is as a person. I want to break his neck in the ring. I want him to be the first person that dies due to octagon-related injuries." It is one thing to talk about breaking someone's arm or breaking a nose, but Mir caught a great deal of bad press for expressing his desire to murder an opponent.
I want to fight Lesnar. I hate who he is as a person. I want to break his neck in the ring. I want him to be the first person that dies due to octagon-related injuries. That's what's going through my mind.
The Beast wasn't taking any of it either and paid it back in full.
Even after you beat Frank Mir down, you still were upset and you got in his face. Tell us why you're still upset.
Frank Mir had a horseshoe up his I told him that a year ago. I pulled that son out and I beat him over the head with it.
Fighters going out of control. Nick Diaz and Joe Riggs fight in hospital after UFC 57. Nick Diaz lost to Joe Riggs at UFC 57 but was not happy with the outcome and still wanted a piece of Riggs later that night at the hospital. Riggs was pretty banged up and Diaz needed some routine work.
I don't know if they sent it to get something from the nurse's station, and so when he did, he walked all the way over to my room. He knew better than
to come over by me. He knows I'm nuts.
So when Diaz saw Riggs at the hospital, he engaged him with some words. The words escalated into a scuffle at the frickin' hospital.
I had to submit a drug test to the commission, and I had to give it to the doctor. So I walked down there to the doctor, and I was carrying my IV pole, and he was down there, and he's like, "The f you doing over here, like at this hospital?" And I'm like, "F you." And then I turn away, and I never thought in a million years he'd hit me. And then as I turn around, he's like, whack, it hits me. The only tooth I've ever lost or broke is that motherfucker. I end up breaking a molar, and I see it fly out. I'm like, no. And then when I was turning, he hit me. I kind of fell into a double egg. I lifted him and I shit all over myself. I shit my pants everywhere. Thank God I was wearing my tights still. And we fought. It felt like it was like 20 minutes, but it was only like 5. And so I was elbowing the out of his head, and then he was toe stomping me with his boots, and I had sandals on, and there was blood everywhere. I thought I was cut somewhere, but it was my IV ripped out, blood spraying everywhere. And then I started to smell my own shit. And then, yeah, I'm like, oh, I gotta get it. This is good. And I knew the cops are coming, so I took a look at Nate. I'm like, get your brother off. And then he starts swiping at me. I'm like, what the f-? And then like, Tim Sylvia's right there. I'm like, what the f-? Are you gonna do something? You fight? I grabbed that motherfucker, and then
heavyweight Tim Sylvia.
Yeah, and then the cops grab us.
Quinton Jackson goes on a rampage. After losing his light heavyweight championship to Forrest Griffin at UFC 86, Quinton Jackson made a few bad decisions.
I was just disgusted.
That sucked.
By bad decisions, I mean he drank a bunch of energy drinks on an empty stomach, and then he drove his monster truck down the wrong side of the road in a crowded Southern California, getting involved in multiple hit and runs. I imagine it took UFC a bunch of really good lawyers to help to try to make everyone forget about this one. Fallon Fox, the transgender woman fighting in the women's division. That is a laying, sick, sociopathic, disgusting freak, and I mean that. Because you lied on your license to beat up women, that's disgusting. You should be embarrassed about yourself. And the fact that Florida licensed him because California licensed him or whatever the hell it did, it's an embarrassment to us as fighters, as a sport, and we all should protest that. The women that's fighting him, props to you. I hope you beat his ass, and I hope he gets blackballed and never fights again because that's disgusting and I'm appalled by that. That was Matt Meathead Mitrione living up to his nickname. He said what some people were thinking, but what could have been said much more diplomatically. His words were in response to the news that the mixed martial artist Fallon Fox, who competes as a woman, was born a man. This sparked a conversation in the world of combat sports over which sex transgender athletes should compete.
One of the things they talk about is how women, or trans women, once they transition to being a woman, they're basically biologically almost exactly the same as women. She was like, no. Not only that, but the bone density is retained by taking estrogen.
That's crazy.
What is that?
I think has she been beaten?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
How are they going to find a woman who's 240 pounds?
They're not.
She's 240 pounds, jacked. And she's a legit black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah.
And she's legitimately tough.
Doctors and league officials seem torn to this day over whether a transgender woman still has a manly enough build to compete in a fair fight with women.
She goes, and he hit me with the right hand and dropped me. She goes, and I got back up. And he hit me with the right hand and dropped me again. And I got back up, and he hit me the third time, dropped me. She said my eye was shut. I needed 14 stitches in my eye and all this stuff. And she said, that's the day I said, you know what? I guess I shouldn't be fighting with men. You know what I mean? So the reason I tell you this story is because I'm saying men are bigger, men are stronger, Men are just built differently. I don't care how tough. Can Ronda Rousey kick the shit out of everybody in this room? Yes, she can. It's a fact, including me. Everybody. I don't care who's in this room right now. Ronda Rousey will kick your ass. It's true. But men are bigger and stronger than women. And when a man hits a woman, it's just different.
Ronda Rousey was asked about a potential fight with the Fox and stated that she would be fine with it, but noted that she still considers Fox to have advantages due to the bone density and male bone structure.
It's one of those situations that's it's a case-by-case scenario thing. I actually really got to try to research it a lot, and I feel like if you already go through puberty as a man, it's something that you can't really reverse, but there are people that are identified as being like a male-identified woman or a woman-identified man early on, and they're put on hormone suppressant therapy until they're of legal age, and then they can make the decision to get the sex change later, and I think that would be acceptable, that would be fine, because they wouldn't already developed the bone structure of a man and the muscular structure. You know, you can't just reverse that. There's no like undo button on that. And so on a case-by-case basis, I think we really have to look at it. But in Fallon Fox's case, I think she does have an unfair advantage.
The man, the myth, Dana White. Dana White is among the best trash talkers in MMA, whether you are a journalist, a fighter, an analyst, or a rival promotion. He has something unpleasant to say about you.
You know what I mean?
Dana White has enraged feminists, the gay community, and of course the legions of fighters who he has called all manner of unkind things.
This week, Colby Covington made some headlines. He said when he beats Kamaru Usman, he says no way he's letting you wrap the belt around him. If you do, he's going to smack you in the head with it. What's your comments on that?
Good luck with that. Good luck with that. He's a big mouth idiot.
Some of his comments include mocking wrestling by calling it fake. By the way, it is, stop dwelling on it, and criticizing fighters who thank Jesus after fights.
Get out of here.
However, it's not just his words that can be outright savage.
Oh my God. Did he say that?
And Randy Couture is one such example.
Fuck that guy. Fuck that guy.
Randy Couture is one of the best fighters in the history of mixed martial arts, and it's hard to deny that. The guy was consistently able to reinvent himself no matter his age or diminishing skill set, which gained him many supporters over the years. Unfortunately, Dana White was not his biggest fan, and that led to an ongoing feud that has barely been resolved to this day. After complaints about his pay despite being paid very handsomely, Couture took to the UFC to court to seek justice. Unfortunately, this didn't happen, and as a result, Dana booked him in to defend his championship against Brock Lesnar, who at that point only had a 1-1 record in the promotion. Couture lost convincingly and wasn't even allowed to be in the corner for his son Ryan's UFC debut a few years later. Brutal.
Randy has tried to do more damage to this company than any fighter in the history of the sport, you know? Everybody thinks he's this Captain America guy and like he's this great guy, when he's really not. Now I don't ever have to be in business with him ever again, you know? And good for him. Let him go do his thing, but I don't have to be in business with him anymore, and that makes me happy.
We anticipated that kind of response from Dana, and so it wasn't a huge surprise. And, you know, I've chosen to be who I am and take the higher road, be positive and move forward and do what I think is right. My biggest concern was my son. You know, I didn't want to do anything that was going to negatively impact his future in the sport. And I think, you know, it looks as though that's going to weather just fine.
So that was it for today's video. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We'll see you in the next one. Until then, adios.